How do you deal with that as a family?
Well, we don't, in many respects, need to deal with it.
The palace did not tremble because of a scandal shouted from the gates. It trembled because of one document, one signature, and one royal woman who refused to blink. By morning, the whispers had turned into shock. Princess Anne had enforced the 1917 letters patent, and Camilla's son was stripped from HRH privileges in a move that cut through the monarchy like a blade hidden in velvet. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Buckingham Palace felt before breakfast. Senior aides were summoned with no warning, and the silence around the table carried the weight of a verdict. Anne stood at the far end, one hand near a sealed folder. No one rushed. No one softened the moment. The 1917 letters patent, an old royal rule that defines who may use certain royal styles and privileges, had become the sharpest weapon in the room. Anne gave the smallest nod, and an aide began to read. The enforcement order was clear, cold, and impossible to mistake. She had enforced the rule, and Tom Parker Bowles was formally stripped from HRH privileges, meaning the special royal style known as His Royal Highness, and the ceremonial access attached to it, were removed from his name. The aide's voice faltered once. Anne did not. Her face stayed controlled, but everyone felt the force behind her stillness. Camilla received the news behind a closed door. The queen consort listened as the words were repeated, and her fingers tightened around the chair. For a moment, she seemed like a mother hearing that her child had been pushed out of a place she believed he had earned through closeness to the crown. The pain was private, but the humiliation was not. Charles was told before the machinery moved. The king opened the folder, read the first page, and set it down without speaking. His silence said what no statement could say. He was husband to Camilla, monarch to the realm, and witness to a decision that wounded both sides of his life. Inside the order sat a sealed note with 5 dangerous words. Unauthorized assumptions of precedence. Someone had pushed too far. William's name appeared nowhere on the page, yet his absence felt louder than a signature. The prince had said nothing in public, offered no defense, and sent no denial. That silence became its own message. Anne had moved first, but the future king's shadow stretched behind the decision, and before anyone could understand why she acted with such force, the palace had to face the people caught at the center of the storm. A royal crisis is never only about paper. It is about people. It is about who belongs, who is tolerated, who is protected, and who is suddenly left standing outside the circle. In this moment, Anne was not simply enforcing an old rule. Camilla was not simply defending her son. Charles was not simply reading a file. Every face in the palace carried a different version of betrayal. Anne believed the monarchy survived through discipline, not comfort. She had spent a lifetime watching exceptions become dangerous habits, and this one felt different because it touched royal identity. HRH privileges mean the special style of His or Her Royal Highness, along with the ceremonial respect, access, and precedence that follow it. To Anne, those letters were not decoration. They were a boundary. If Camilla's son could move near that boundary without challenge, others would ask why the line existed at all. Camilla felt the blow as a mother before she felt it as queen consort. She sat in a private room after the news broke, shaken, and whispered that her family had been made to look like intruders. Her son had not seized a throne, he had not claimed a crown, yet the punishment made him sound like someone reaching for what was never his. That wounded her pride, but it cut deeper, because it touched the fear that her family would never truly be accepted. Charles carried the heaviest silence. The king stared at the order while Camilla waited for him to speak, and he avoided her eyes because every answer betrayed someone. If he defended her too strongly, he weakened the institution he had sworn to protect. If he defended the crown too coldly, he left the woman beside him alone in the fire. His hands stayed still. The folder remained open between them like a wound. William had entered a closed meeting with Anne the night before the enforcement. The prince spoke carefully, as if one careless sentence could ignite the palace. He did not raise his voice, but he asked whether ceremonial access, invitations, seating positions, and household movement had been reviewed together. A private aide revealed through a documented account that the dispute had been tracked for weeks. The aide also admitted that several names had moved on draft lists before anyone dared call it a crisis. Camilla demanded one answer. She wanted to know who first questioned her son's privileges, who looked at him and saw not family but risk. Anne offered no name. Charles offered no comfort. William offered no denial. And the answer was not buried in ancient law alone, but in one specific moment that changed everything. Every palace rupture has a moment people remember later with painful clarity. Not the first whisper, not the first warning, the moment, the one that makes silence impossible. For Anne, that moment came during a private Windsor reception, when Camilla's son was guided into a place reserved for royal precedence, and the room froze with the awful understanding that a boundary had been crossed in public view. Anne saw it before anyone dared name it. The Windsor Commonwealth reception, a private gathering tied to Britain's relationship with Commonwealth nations, was meant to be calm and tightly ordered. Royal precedence means the ranked order of who stands, enters, sits, and is recognized first at official moments. That ranking matters because it tells every guest where power truly sits. When Tom Parker Bowles was placed where senior royals belonged, Anne understood the message, even if no one said it aloud. Camilla noticed the change instantly. The Queen Consort watched courtiers exchange careful looks, and her shoulders stiffened as Anne's jaw tightened across the reception. To Camilla, her son's placement felt like a small act of family recognition, a quiet sign that years of suspicion had softened at last. To Anne, it looked like something more dangerous. It looked like a privilege being tested in public before anyone dared stop it. The room kept moving, but the damage had begun. Charles spoke to guests with control, yet the king glanced once toward Anne and understood that she had seen enough. William said little, but the prince watched the same uneasy pattern unfold around the seating. The future king knew why it mattered. If one informal adjustment passed without challenge, another could follow, and soon the palace would defend a custom no one had approved. Anne asked for the seating chart after the reception ended. A documented account from a senior household aide later revealed that she requested not only the final version, but also the earlier drafts. The discovery chilled the room around her. The change had not moved through the normal protocol office. Protocol, in plain terms, means the official system of rules that controls royal order and public ceremony. This adjustment had slipped through another route, quiet enough to pass, bold enough to leave a mark. Anne found more than one mark. Similar changes appeared in draft guest lists, ceremonial briefings, and private access notes, each one small alone, but quietly dangerous together. Camilla did not yet know the chart had become evidence. Charles did not yet know how far Anne would go. William did. And when Anne drew one hard line beside the seating change and wrote, "This ends now," the coming confrontation became unavoidable. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. That made it worse. It began with a closed door, a silent aide stepping away, and two women facing each other without ceremony to soften the blow. Anne carried the file under one arm. Camilla stood by the fireplace, already wounded before the first word was spoken. In that room, the monarchy's coldest rule met a mother's fiercest instinct. Anne had requested the meeting herself. She refused to let courtiers carry the message, because this was no longer a matter that could be hidden behind careful language. Courtiers are senior palace staff, who help manage royal duties, schedules, and private arrangements. But Anne knew they could not absorb the anger that was coming. Camilla watched the file in her hands and understood that the Windsor incident had not faded. It had hardened. Camilla spoke first, and her voice carried more pain than rage. The Queen Consort accused Anne of taking an old royal instrument and turning it into a weapon against her son. She said Tom Parker Bowles had not asked to be treated like a prince. He had only stood where the palace placed him. Yet the punishment, she argued, made him look greedy, ambitious, and guilty before he had even been allowed to defend himself. Anne did not flinch. She opened the file and placed the marked seating chart on the table, then added the protocol memos beside it. Protocol memos are written palace instructions that explain who attends, where they sit, and how official order is protected at royal events. The 1917 letters patent, the rule being enforced, was not just old paper to Anne, it was a guardrail. She told Camilla the crown could not be stretched around affection until the shape of monarchy itself became unclear. Camilla saw the back-channel approvals next. Her face changed. The Queen Consort realized Anne already knew that the Windsor seating change had not moved through the normal office. Someone had handed her the trail. Someone with access. Someone close enough to see the drafts before they became final. She asked who gave Anne the documents, and the question hung between them like a threat. Anne refused to answer. Her silence said enough. Camilla thought of William, of Charles, of every careful glance that had passed across the palace in recent weeks. The Princess Royal did not accuse anyone, but she did not protect anyone either. She simply closed the file and let the truth stand there between them. Camilla's anger broke into something quieter when Anne placed the file fully on the table. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Charles had already seen it. The Queen Consort froze, because that meant the decision had moved beyond Anne's hands. Power in the palace does not always announce itself with raised voices. Sometimes it appears in the pause before a signature, in the chair left empty at a meeting, in the way one person speaks, and everyone else stops breathing. Anne may have carried the order, but the machinery behind it was larger than one woman. The crown was deciding who had the right to stand near it, and who had only been allowed too close. Charles sat alone with the final draft. The king looked older in that silence, not because he lacked power, but because power had cornered him. Anne controlled the moral argument, William carried the future of the institution, and Camilla waited on the other side of a decision that would wound her home. The crown, in plain terms, means the monarchy as an institution, not just the person wearing the crown. That difference mattered now, because Charles could love as a husband, but he had to decide as monarch. William entered without ceremony. The prince did not push the door wide or fill the room with certainty. He came in quietly, as if the weight of the decision demanded restraint. Royal privilege means the special access, honor, and recognition given to people formally inside the royal structure. The question before Charles was brutal. Did privilege come from law, bloodline, duty, or personal loyalty? If he delayed, the future king warned, the palace would look afraid of its own rules. Charles rubbed his thumb over the edge of the page. The king knew William was right, and that made it worse. Delay would protect Camilla for one more day, but it would also tell every courtier, every aide, and every watcher that private feeling could bend public order. He set down his pen once, picked it up again, then stopped. His face showed the cost before his hand made the choice. William softened when he spoke of Camilla. The prince said the queen consort would feel abandoned, and Charles closed his eyes because that was the truth he feared most. Anne had forced the palace to face discipline. William had forced it to face tomorrow. But Camilla would face the cameras, the whispers, and the private ache of knowing her son had become the line everyone else needed to draw. A courtier confirmed through a documented account that Anne had warned the palace weeks earlier. She had said informal privilege could become a constitutional embarrassment if no one stopped it. Constitutional, in simple terms, means connected to the rules and duties that keep the monarchy lawful and stable. The final order did not stop at HRH privileges. It triggered a review of ceremonial invitations, transport, seating, and household access. Charles signed at last. The king did not look victorious. William did not look relieved. Anne was not in the room, but her warning ruled it. And the ink had barely dried before the palace began stripping away the small symbols that made the punishment impossible to hide. Consequences rarely arrive all at once. They arrive as small humiliations. A name missing from a list, a car not waiting, a door that once opened without question, suddenly remaining closed. For Camilla, the fallout became real, not in a legal briefing, but in one unbearable moment, when her son arrived at a royal entrance and discovered the palace had already obeyed Anne's order. Camilla heard the phone before she understood the damage. The queen consort listened as Tom Parker Bowles explained that he had been redirected at a private palace entrance, not with cruelty, but with calm obedience. Palace security had received updated access instructions before the day had properly begun. Access instructions are the private rules telling guards, staff, and event teams who may enter certain areas, which doors they may use, and what level of treatment they receive. That mattered because the punishment was no longer hidden inside a folder. It had reached the doors. Tom tried to sound steady, but his voice gave him away. He told Camilla that the car expected for him had not been waiting, and the entrance once opened without question now required clearance he no longer held. The queen consort closed her eyes. Her son had been removed from HRH-linked ceremonial privileges, meaning the honor, order, and private household access connected to that royal style had been taken away. The loss was technical on paper. In life, it felt like exile. Charles heard her voice break. The king stood nearby, and when Camilla lowered the phone, he turned away, because he knew the wound had his signature on it. He had allowed the order to move. He had watched Anne's warning become palace action, yet seeing Camilla's pain made duty feel less like strength and more like betrayal. The monarch could protect the crown, but the husband had failed to protect the woman beside him. A junior aide discovered the next shock. Through a documented account later shared inside the household, the aide revealed that several future event lists had already been amended before Camilla was formally told. Event lists are the internal schedules that decide who is invited, where they sit, and what role they hold at royal gatherings. That detail mattered because it proved the order had not moved slowly. It had moved like a plan waiting for permission. Camilla understood the speed at once. Anne had not simply reacted after the confrontation. The Princess Royal had prepared the palace operation long before the final blow landed. Security, transport, seating, and household access had shifted almost together, each change small enough to sound practical, but together, they made the punishment impossible to deny. Camilla demanded a final private meeting with Charles. The Queen Consort wanted one answer from the king. Not from aides, not from files, not from Anne. But before Charles could reach her, William arrived first, and the room changed. And in that next private exchange, the story stopped being about documents and became about family, loyalty, and the cost of survival. The turning point did not come in a council chamber. It came in a smaller room, with no aides, no protocol officers, no carefully placed folders. William stood near the window. Camilla sat opposite him, wounded and furious. For the first time, the future king and the queen consort spoke without the palace between them. What followed was not loud, but it changed the emotional direction of the crisis. William had asked for the meeting before Camilla could reach Charles. The prince knew one more confrontation with the king could split the household into wounded camps. And this moment mattered because the monarchy could survive a legal correction more easily than a family war. Protocol officers are palace staff who manage rank, order, and ceremony at royal events. But William wanted none of them in the room. No one could soften the truth for him. No one could translate Camilla's pain into safer words. Camilla looked at him like someone who had waited years to ask one forbidden question. The queen consort wanted to know whether he had ever accepted her family as part of the royal story, or whether every smile had carried a hidden limit. William did not answer quickly. That pause hurt her, because it sounded like judgment before he even spoke. She had defended her son. She had stood beside Charles. Yet now she felt as if the palace had finally shown her the wall it had never removed. William chose honesty over comfort. The prince told Camilla that acceptance and constitutional privilege were not the same thing. Constitutional privilege means the special standing connected to royal law, duty, and public rank, not personal closeness to the sovereign. That mattered because the crown could welcome people privately while refusing to place them inside the official royal order. He said Anne's enforcement was not meant to erase Camilla's family. It was meant to stop confusion over who carried royal standing. Camilla's face tightened when William mentioned Windsor. The future king revealed in a recorded private conversation summary that he supported the review after seeing the reception seating chart. He had seen the same danger Anne saw. If one reign allowed unclear privilege to grow unchecked, the next reign would inherit the damage and be forced to correct it in an even harsher way. William admitted that he did not want the future monarchy built on silence. Camilla understood the truth then. Anne had enforced the order, but William had allowed the future to stand behind it. The queen consort did not forgive him. She did not soften. But something inside her changed from resistance to survival. She quietly said she would not fight Charles in public. That choice changed the palace response. But outside the gates, the world was already turning the royal wound into a national spectacle. By dawn, the palace could no longer contain the story. What had begun in sealed rooms and private files became a public reckoning, splashed across Britain's morning papers. The nation did not see protocol. It saw power. It saw Anne's steel, Camilla's humiliation, Charles's silence, and William's shadow behind the decision. Suddenly, the question was no longer what happened inside the palace. It was what the country believed it meant. A front page made the private wound feel permanent. Across one morning paper, the headline read, "Anne draws the royal line," beside a stark image of Buckingham Palace gates at sunrise. Buckingham Palace, the main working center of the monarchy, matters because its gates turn private royal decisions into national symbols. Once those words reached breakfast tables, train platforms, and television studios, Camilla's family pain became public judgment. Camilla saw the paper over breakfast and pushed it away. The queen consort had known the order would hurt, but she had not expected the story to be framed like a public correction of her bloodline. Her son's name now sat inside a national debate about access, belonging, and royal limits. That mattered because the punishment no longer belonged to palace paperwork. It belonged to strangers with opinions, voices, and headlines. Anne watched the coverage without triumph. The Princess Royal saw broadcasters call her firm, ruthless, necessary, and cold, sometimes in the same breath. Broadcasters are television and radio presenters who shape how the public first understands a major story, and their framing mattered because millions would hear the decision before reading the details. Anne did not smile. She knew discipline had protected the crown, but it had also turned a family wound into a public lesson. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates. Some praised Anne for protecting tradition. Others called the move cruel, saying Camilla's son had been punished for standing too close to a world he never built. The crowd mattered because monarchy depends not only on law, but on feeling. If the public saw order, the palace looked strong. If the public saw spite, the palace looked wounded from within. William heard the line that changed the day. One broadcaster said, "This is not merely a demotion. It is a message about who the monarchy will allow inside its inner circle." The prince understood the danger immediately. Demotion means a loss of rank or status, but this was more than that. It was a warning to every person near the crown that closeness was not the same as entitlement. Charles prepared for the final statement while Camilla waited in silence. The king had to choose his voice carefully. If he defended the order too strongly, he deepened her humiliation. If he softened it too much, he weakened Anne's stand. When that final statement came, it would not undo the damage, but it would give the crisis its final meaning. In the end, the palace did not ask the world to look away. It asked the world to understand the line. Anne had enforced it. Charles had permitted it. William had accepted it. Camilla had suffered beneath it. And her son, once pulled close to the glow of royal privilege, was placed firmly outside its constitutional circle. The decision was brutal, but in palace terms it was final. Charles approved the final statement with a face that gave away nothing and carried everything. The king knew each sentence would be measured by Camilla, defended by Anne, and inherited by William. HRH privileges, meaning the right to be styled His or Her Royal Highness and receive the special ceremonial respect attached to that status, would remain tied to recognized royal standing. Ceremonial precedence, the official order deciding who is placed first at royal events, would not be shaped by household closeness. That mattered because the monarchy could not survive if private affection looked stronger than public rule. Camilla read the statement in silence. The queen consort understood its careful wording, and that made the pain sharper. It did not insult her son. It did not accuse him. It simply placed him outside the royal circle, with clean, official calm. Charles came to her afterward, and for a long moment neither spoke. He reached for her hand, but she did not immediately take it. The king had protected the crown, yet the husband beside her had allowed the wound to land. Anne stood alone after the palace settled. The Princess Royal heard distant movement return to normal. Doors opening, aides speaking softly, duty continuing as if nothing human had broken beneath it. She had enforced the 1917 letters patent, the old royal document that defines who may carry certain royal styles and privileges. Anne had won the argument, but victory gave her no warmth. Her face carried the sadness of someone who saved the institution and still felt the cost. William spoke quietly to Charles before the day ended. The prince told him the monarchy had survived because the decision came before confusion became permanent. Charles listened, and the king understood the deeper truth. William was not celebrating Camilla's pain. He was protecting the future from inheriting a problem no one had dared to solve. Camilla finally accepted what the statement meant. The crown would protect her position as queen consort, but it would not extend royal identity to everyone she loved. That was the final verdict. The monarchy chose structure over sentiment, duty over softness, and survival over private comfort. There was no further mystery to soften the ending. Anne drew the line. Charles allowed it to stand. William inherited its meaning, and Camilla learned that even love cannot bend the crown forever. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.